it was announced.
When we left terrestrial radio. And his job was to replace us with someone.
Yeah, he had a year, I guess, to look for a replacement.
And he came up with David Lee Roth.
Oh. Well, the three. Was he responsible for the three thing where it was Adam in one part of the country, some other guy in another part of the country, and then David Lee Roth in certain areas?
Hey, Rob.
Hey, Howard.
Rob Barnett.
Is this the first meeting? Had you guys met before?
Barely. You know, I shook your hand when you got up on stage in December out on the street and said something like Godspeed. Yeah. But, you know, I figured the maximum respect I could pay you throughout that whole fucking ridiculous event was to leave you alone.
Well, yeah, and that was probably a good idea. Now, Tim Sabian says...
Yes, whatever he says, he's lying.
Do you think he's lying?
He could be lying.
Why?
Here's what his story is.
Well,
Tim says...
I want to hear his version
when
first.
When I went up on stage and said goodbye to my fans...
Right.
That day when I left terrestrial radio... He said that you turned to him and said, well, now he's your problem.
I did say that. That was a joke. That was a joke. That was an attempt at a joke.
Right.
Here's one thing that's clear. The only person that came out perfect and beautiful and smelling like a rose from the whole thing is you.
I came out smelling okay.
Yeah.
So take us back to that time.
Yeah.
You were working at CBS Radio, and your title originally...
here's a great one. It's October 6th, 2004.
Okay.
I'm in bed with my wife.
Right.
You come on, and we turn it on every morning, and you quit.
Right.
I had been there for a few months with some innocuous job title. John Sykes brought me in as executive producer of special programming, blah, 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 blah.
Essentially to develop new radio shows.
Yeah, come up with some good ideas.
Right.
So I lean over to my wife, and I say... This is not good.
Right.
And she says, what do you mean? I said, it's not good for me. It's not good for anyone. This is the end.
Right.
And she says, what are you talking about? You just got there.
I'm getting out.
Yeah.
Right.
So I go into work that day, and, of course, you can only imagine what that floor is like at 1515 Broadway because you've set off a nuclear bomb.
We have no idea what that was like.
Well, actually, I do.
You do.
Because Joel Hollander was furious with me.
Did he call you that day?
I forget exactly how it all went down, or he called my agent.
John.
Or maybe he called no one, but I know he was angry with me because he felt that I had betrayed him in some way. I said, listen, Joel, I told you I'm talking to Satellite. I'm talking to a lot of places. This terrestrial radio thing is killing me. It was nothing personal in it. I really felt that I'd done everything I could do in terrestrial radio. I hated being there. I resented the censorship. It wasn't their fault even. And I just felt that I felt alone in all of it. You know, I didn't feel like I was part of a team. I felt I had... In fact, many times they would tell me, we can't even expand your radio show and put you on in new markets because... we can't make money with you. You're too outrageous. We won't put you on in Atlanta. You know, and I had just kind of gotten fed up. And I said, I think I got to...
that's why I'm saying, why was there such pandemonium? He was a frustrated star.
I had told him that. But there was pandemonium because I think they thought I'd always stay.
Right. But they did nothing to make you want to stay. There was no great...
Well, that's true.
No. They didn't... treat you well.
No.
They paid you, but you weren't treated well. You weren't a part of anything.
But I also felt they didn't pay me what I was worth.
No. I agree with that too. I'm simply saying all they did was pay you.
Well, you brought up an amazing point. It's shocking if you think back now to the fact, well, you probably remember the number better than me, but it was something like 27 radio stations. When I heard that number, I thought, that's small.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be 57 radio stations?
Well, you make a good point, because I had a syndication business. We were on about 60 markets at one point.
Yeah.
Not all of them were CBS stations. And that bothered me. I mean, a lot of times I go to them, I go, hey, you guys have 3 stations in Atlanta. Why not put me on? Oh, no. You know, we're doing fine. We're doing fine there. I go, you guys are billing about $2 million in profits there. I think I could do better. And they were like, no, you can't. It's too hard to sell you. It's difficult. And I got tired of the bullshit. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so you're there.
So
you're the guy who's supposed to be developing some programming. I announce I'm leaving. You tell your wife it's no good.
I go to work.
Right.
And I'm there 3 days after you quit. and I see all these people walk down the hall into the conference room, and not me.
Nobody invited you?
No one invited me.
That's not a good sign.
I saw a whole lot of people
What'd you do wrong?
So one guy is the then president of programming, a guy named Steve Rivers, old radio guy.
Right.
And Moonves is head of human resources. I'm forgetting his name now, because who cares?
Right.
And they go into the conference room, and they're in there for a while, and I'm sitting there saying, I know it's coming. I know it's coming. And I just kept thinking of this Seinfeld episode where George Costanza goes to work every day. He doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
And he goes, here we go. You know, he just walks in. And I just kept thinking, they're not going to kill me. They're not. I can take it. I'm a man. So they come down the hall. They walk into my office.
But had you left a job to work at CBS? You must have left something.
No, I was in between because I had done an amazing thing. I documented John Kerry's run for president.
Right.
And we had a camera backstage on him every day, which was fascinating. So I was like a guy trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
So they walk into my tiny little office, they close the door, head of HR, president, and the first thing they say is, we just want you to know that what we're about to say is not personal.
Yeah, that's what they said to me, by the way, when they told me they were going to sue me.
You're a great guy.
Yeah.
This is business. And, you know, this is 3 days after you guys make the announcement. We're going to have to start making changes around here. We're going to have to let you go.
Wow. You?
Right there.
What did you have to do with this?
I think I was making money, and the idea of money and you kind of go together.
So the first action they take when I announce I'm leaving is to fire you.
Amongst other things that would have went on in that closed-door meeting that I didn't know anything about.
That's horrible. Yeah. So you get canned and it's nothing personal.
So I say, this is great, no problem.
Who told you it's nothing personal, Les?
No. This was head of HR.
HR, okay.
And so I say, here's the two things I suggest. First is talk to my lawyer, have a contract. You guys work that out.
Right.
The second thing is that starting tomorrow, I've got this new program called Street Date. And for the next 2 weeks, Alanis Morissette, Lenny Kravitz, John Bon Jovi, Duran Duran, Shania Twain, and somebody else are all going to come to this studio on the 46th floor and do this stuff that I've set up. That would be pretty embarrassing.
Right.
To can all that. I'll stay for 2 weeks. I'll finish it all up for you. So I'm doing this, and every day all the people are getting their pictures taken with rock stars. And a lot of people know I'm fired, so they're kind of looking at me like,
wow, you're doing some good things.
What are you doing?
Right.
And Joel Hollander grabs me on like day 3 or day 4, sits me down and says, here's the deal. You're going to replace Stern. Don't fuck it up. You're going to be the president of programming. And then they can the guy that fired me.
They fired Steve Rivers.
And they put me in the job.
Wow. Oh, so you never had to actually leave.
I unfired myself.
Wow, you got lucky, huh?
It was weird.
Well, they saw you were a hard worker and this and that.
It was weird, you know.
So why in the hell did you hire David Lee Roth? Even my guy, we discuss this all the time.
Yeah.
Well,
David Lee Roth was a rock guy. I mean, a rock star. There was
that couldn't have been the first choice.
78th choice.
He was the second. All right, who were the other choices? So now you were in charge of replacing this show.
Yes.
That's kind of a daunting thing because we've been successful in all this. How do you approach it? Who do you approach?
Let's call it a ridiculous impossibility, right?
Well,
so there were 3 ideas. 1, you change your mind. 2, Jesus Christ comes back to earth. Or 3, the only name that occurred to me that, let's just talk about business for a second, that advertisers would hear and think, hey, maybe we'll put 1/20th of Howard's dollars on that, was Jon Stewart.
Jon Stewart.
And I know John from the MTV days.
Okay.
And I said to Joel, here's one idea. One idea. John's not going to host a radio show.
Right.
So he said, so then what's the point?
Right.
I said, there's another way to do this. John is many things, but he's also a producer, a great one, and he's a great person to find and develop talent. So let's go talk to him.
Let him be the producer. Treat it like a TV show. In other words, he'll be the producer, and let him get some of his guys.
No one knew Stephen. Most people didn't know who Stephen Colbert was.
Right, and he developed him.
When you quit.
Right.
He developed him. He developed Steve Carell, Rob Corddry, really great guys.
Right.
Not radio guys.
Okay.
But this big star name that Moonves and everyone would be happy. And so we went and had the meeting, and I set the meeting up under those conditions.
Right. You said to John, I'm not looking for you to host the show, but I'd love for you to produce it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we go in, and I think I got 5 minutes into the pitch, and Joel says, no. You got to host the radio show.
To Jon Stewart.
To John. End of meeting.
So John walked out?
It was a nice end of a meeting.
Right.
The beauty that came out of that is that two of my best friends from this whole experience have become Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla. They're managed by the same guy who manages Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert.
So are you mad at Joe Hollander for sabotaging that whole thing? Do you think it was a dopey thing to do?
You created a situation that was an impossibility for every single human being involved.
Right.
So
Jon Stewart turned you down. So what do you do then? David Lee Roth?
Well, no.
No. Who'd you go to next?
Right.
There had to be more
78 other things.
78 other ideas, right?
What was the next big idea?
Well, then it became apparent that you have to take the idea of one person doing what you did and flush it down the toilet.
Right.
So I came up with an idea, which I'd love to talk to you about because I think you always assumed the idea was meant as a dig. It was actually meant as in respect.
Yes.
The idea was free FM.
Right.
The idea was you can't get one guy. So what if we lit up, in this case, I think about a dozen major radio stations in major markets and went FM talk on all of them. Maybe in 20 years, one of those people
breaks out
of 20 gets 1/20th of your success.
Right. Now, it was generally perceived that free FM, the name free FM, was a dig at me. I was going to go on a pay service. And, after all, I was going to satellite where people had to pay. So they're saying, hey, forget it. We're free. Radio is free.
That was a cute accident. But when I started, and by the way, I started at 64 WTBU.
Right.
In the basement of Boston University a few years after you.
Right.
But in the early days of interning in radio, I worked for a guy named Stephen Kleen. I don't know if you ever met him.
No.
Stephen knew Harry Shearer. I've known Harry for 30 years. Harry works on my company now.
Right.
And the idea in the beginning was that a few brave souls said whatever the fuck they wanted to say.
Right.
And that was free-form radio.
Right.
And in honor of what you were leaving, I felt like if anybody has one of the two balls that you have and some of the brains, then maybe over time
they could develop
something. But if guys at CBS wanted your ratings in 5 minutes,
right, that's not going to happen. You need to develop it.
Yeah.
The second option was to meet with Matt Stone and Trey Parker, who are the developers of the TV show South Park. They're the creators of it. And you had the same idea. You'll have a meeting with them, say to them, guys, we don't know what we want, but you guys are creative. Do you want to put together a radio show? Do you want to be the executive producer of the radio show? Which is certainly a new way of approaching radio. But my question is, why not approach somebody currently in radio? Mm-hmm. Like, why not go to someone who was on the radio to maybe replace me and do that kind of thing?
So now you get to the place that you won't like, which is that early on, it was decided in these little meetings that guys like Sabian was in that maybe O&A.
Right.
And
Opie and Anthony.
Difficult because you hate them, they hate you, but they're radio guys. And how many people could possibly do a 4-hour radio show
every day? I don't hate
them.
I don't hate them. I object to what they say about me.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like. I don't think it's honest.
Yeah.
But I don't hate them. I don't really hate anyone in radio. I mean, I don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
I just know I have friends and I'm people who aren't so friendly to me.
Yeah.
So, I don't wish them any ill.
And by that time, weren't they they were at XM?
They were at XM. So we raised this idea early on, again, 13 years before David Lee Roth, and it was shot down immediately. Mm-hmm. I think the response was, no. and so...
But ultimately, I mean, okay, so that they eventually tried that. It didn't work out. Their show didn't work as well. But David Lee Roth was the most unusual choice.
Yeah, like, how do you come up with that one? Because now you got no from radio guys. So what happens that leads to David Lee Roth?
You got to know from Jon Stewart. Matt and Trey, I assume,
were great. Those are fascinating meetings to have because you know them. I mean, they're brilliant guys.
Why did they say no? They didn't like the idea of being executive producer?
We never really got our arms around what the hell would they do. They were fascinated, as anyone would be. Everyone took the phone call, right?
Right.
Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Larry David.
You called Jerry Seinfeld, and you said, Jerry...
Joel did, I think.
Joel did. He said, hey, Jerry, you want to be the morning man at K-Rock?
He did. I have an email somewhere from Larry David. I have an email from Larry David that says, very, very, very flattered. Thank you.
Wow.
So you approached Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, and Larry David. Chris Rock did not want to replace me?
No. See, this is now getting us back to David Lee Roth, because the balls that are needed to attempt to sit, not just in the chair, but in your studio, you know.
In a sense, you make a good point. In other words, once you decided to go with this, once you couldn't get a radio guy to do it, you said to yourself, well, okay, who's the biggest celebrities that we could get? And it makes sense that on some level, Jerry Seinfeld, a beloved guy who's a funny guy, Chris Rock certainly, or Larry David might actually be able to say something funny on the radio. They all turn you down. They don't want it. Which is understandable, I guess, on one level. But, you know, radio has become something sort of seen in a different light when you can be on 20 stations all of a sudden.
Right.
But they didn't want it.
But also, they realize what you've known your whole career, the hardest job in all of show business.
It is hard.
5 hours a day live for years. So there's probably, when they're already that rich, not enough money in the world that could get them to imagine how to create 5 hours of content.
You're right. Jerry Seinfeld's living a great life. Why does he want to get up at 4 in the morning when he's... What does he have, something like $1 billion already?
Yeah, plus, you know, you make the point that they come up with an hour of material they use over and over and over and over again for years.
So now you're realizing your job is really... You're between a rock and a hard place. The clock is ticking. You've got to come up with a name.
Yeah.
And so, I guess now you've gone through all of these names. Who came up with the name David Lee Roth?
I can't remember who came up with the name, but I know that we used to have these meetings. Joel called it the Sexy Seven, because it was 7 not very sexy older gentlemen.
Right.
Sabian was in there.
Right.
Kevin Weatherly.
Right.
Jack Silver. Guys that used to, you know, enjoy pressing on and potting you up, you know, for 20 years, are now going to figure this all out.
Okay.
And so there were lists. I wish I could have found the list, but I'm so busy running my own thing now that I should have brought you the list. I'll find it for you.
But I can imagine the names. I mean,
so many names.
But David Lee Roth, you make a good point. He's got such a big ego. He might actually take the job.
You make a great point, which is, there weren't that many people that wanted the job.
Right.
Okay? He wanted it. He wanted it bad.
Right.
From the minute that it came up.
Isn't that funny? Because I remember David Lee Roth as like a rock god. You would think that would be the last thing he'd be interested in.
But he's on some headphones. And
do, you know, I don't think people realize every day. I mean, I'm talking about wealthy. David Lee Roth's a wealthy guy, I assume. I don't know.
I've always wondered.
Yeah, me too. I wonder too. Maybe he needed the money.
Did he blow
But, you know, you have to figure he was, you know, languishing out there in obscurity. The Van Halen thing wasn't happening.
Right. They couldn't get back together, or at that point couldn't.
Yeah, I guess I always imagined that David Lee Roth was a big, famous, rich rock star, and you're like, well, who the hell?
He really wasn't doing anything. Remember, he was doing, he was being an EMT to pass the time.
Well, EMTs make okay salaries.
Remember that?
That's right.
But he had, I think he had filled in, you might remember this, I think he had filled in at K-Rock maybe afternoons years ago.
Right.
So a couple of guys, Chernoff, you know, a couple of guys knew that had happened.
They liked the way he sounded.
So then instead of saying, hey, let's just throw him into the hardest job in the history of planet Earth, we put him up in Boston for a week. I think it was on the classic rock station.
Right.
ZLX. And honestly, I'm telling you, he did amazing. He shocked us. He did a full week. First, we wanted to see, can this fucking guy wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Who knows? We didn't know anything about him as a person. Could he show up? Would he quit on the second day or whatever?
Right.
And there was a week of radio that impressed the top guys of, I guess, what was then called Infinity.
Right.
Because it impressed the hell out of a lot of people. And then we started having meetings with him and talk about it as an idea. But
so you describe a guy who seemed reasonable. After a week of the radio, he sounded pretty good. It sounded like he could pull this thing off. He certainly had name value.
Yeah.
And so you begin to believe in him, that he can do this. And you had the belief that he was intelligent. And what gave you the belief he was intelligent? Seriously.
I'm trying to think back. I mean,
no, I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying what gave you the belief that he was.
You know what? I don't think in the end. The quick failure was about intelligence. More than anything, it came down to the fact that you were leaving, but Tom was staying. Right. Tom Chiusano, Mark Chernoff, the guys that had been with you for arguably some of the best years of your career, were there to manage, as they've always done, a morning radio show. So the meltdown came probably, I don't know, day 1 or day 2, when he got in the chair and wouldn't talk to Tom, wouldn't talk to Mark, wouldn't listen
to anybody,
to anyone who was there to do only one thing, which was help him.
In other words, he saw the help as he resented it. In other words, he was used to being a huge star in the music business.
M&Ms and everything he wanted.
And all of a sudden, he's starting a new venture. The wise thing would have been to listen to maybe Chiusano, to Chernoff, to some of the experts and say, look, I don't know what I'm doing yet. Do you guys have suggestions for me? Do you think my show was too boring? Do you think it was this? Can you help me out here? Instead of turning to them, he was immediately, shall we say, arrogant?
You could say that. And then the press, of course, you could predict this. It was page 1 headlines, remember, like day 1, as anyone except maybe Jesus would have gotten, you know, this guy sucks, disaster. So I remember going to him in the first few days saying, you know what you need to do? You need to use that. You need to go on and talk about it.
Read it.
Read it. Deal with it. That's what you would do.
I even said I'd call in on the show and give him some tips, but he didn't want to hear from it. I thought it would have been funny.
I'm dying to know. So, but David Lee Roth's first day, did you guys, was there any sort of a meeting about, Dave, what are you going to do? Was there any sort of prep? Or did he just say, I've got it, first day is mine, I know what I'm going to do? And the point I'm trying to make is, did anybody know Uncle Manny, who to me is now a legendary figure in New York radio? Did anybody say Uncle Manny may not be the best guest for the first day?
Oh, yeah. There were weeks of arguments about, you know, how to staff the show. I mean, the opposite, just real quick, was Jimmy Kimmel producing with me. Adam. Jimmy and I built a team. We hired 15 guys. We knew exactly who the staff was going to be, because obviously you can't do a radio show alone. You need a family. So, Gary, you're absolutely right. All the attempts to, in those final days or weeks, build that team were met with, you know...
How soon were you guys freaking out? Like, after the first day?
Well, the world was freaking out. I mean, it was...
But were you really losing... Like, did you say, oh, my God, we just paid this guy $5 million? I think I heard it was $5 million, something along those lines. Were you freaking out immediately, like going, we made a mistake?
Well, I mean, I go back to the beginning of this whole conversation, which is that there really wasn't going to be anybody in the New York chair that was probably, if you think back, I mean, you know this, no one was going to survive it. So in a way, O&A got this, like, little gift, maybe. They got a palate cleanser of 3 or 4 months.
They were lucky.
Of your fans, you know, realizing that the world had ended, so that maybe the pressure on them day 1, I can't remember when it was, I want to say it was 3 or 4 months into it.
The pressure wasn't as bad on them.
Probably a little secret gift for them. A lot of people, you know, it's like the Kennedy assassination. Like, people think it was planned that way.
Some people thought it was the idea to get put on David Lee Roth as kind of a joke.
See, that would have been a great idea.
It would have been,
David Lee Roth, you know, we'll say he's the guy.
I would have looked much smarter.
It's only a 3-month run.
A lot of my radio friends said to me, I'd rather be the guy who not replaces you, but the guy who replaces your replacement. And in a way, that makes sense. So with all this freaking out and all this going on, and David Lee Roth doesn't look like he's going to make it, it becomes a huge problem. And, you know, I remember David Lee Roth came in. They said to me he wants to come in and announce that he's going to be a replacement.
That was my idea. That's one of the few things I can take credit for, because I thought, you know what? I hated how some of the shit was going down the last few months. I felt like not only were you being disrespected in the process, but the most important people in the world were being disrespected.
The fans.
The fans. If CBS was going to be lucky enough to get 1/20th of your fans to give any of the shows, forget New York and David Lee Roth, but even Adam or anybody a chance, then I always felt, and I was not the head guy. I had a sexy title, but you know there were others above me. I felt like you should have been in the process all along.
Well, you know what? I think that's very wise of you to say, because when David came in, he looked like he was ready to fight me. And I was saying to myself, this guy doesn't get it. I'm not his enemy.
You're gone. I was unbelievably gracious.
But I was disarming him the whole time.
Yeah.
He was looking at me, and I said to him, David, you've never done radio before. And I wasn't saying it antagonistically. I said, are you nervous about it? And he goes, man, I talk to 300,000 people. I talk to 1 million people in a stadium when I perform with Van Halen. How could I be nervous? And I go, well, quite frankly, it's a little different. Saying a couple of things on stage for a few seconds to a crowd. And
then getting to sing.
And then singing. It's very different to be on mic, you know, in front of millions of people, you know, all morning. It's just a whole different thing. It's like either playing baseball or football. And he looked at me with, like, such kind of a blank stare, like, I'm not worried about it. I said,
The other thing that he said, that he said was that, you know, he's looking forward to the opportunity to talk to millions as opposed to the few he could get into a stadium. And you looked at him and you said, who's guaranteeing you that there are going to be millions listening?
Yeah, I said, no, there's millions of listening today. I've built that up. I said, when you start, you might have millions, you know, eventually, but you might only have 2 people listening the first day.
You might have way less than you had in the stadium.
Yeah, so it was very, very weird. And I wished them the best. And Adam Carolla and I talk all the time on the phone. I wished him the best. I didn't...
He did great. Come on. You know, when they got rid of me, I felt like he wasn't going to be protected there because, you know, the main thing Jimmy and I did in working that and Adam was to say to the guys in Los Angeles, this is a radio guy. Adam's been on the radio for 15 years.
He's had experience.
He knows that replacing you, that whole word is so ridiculous. He knows that taking a morning show that you used to do is going to be incredibly hard, and we begged management, begged them to leave him alone for 6 months.
Right.
Leave him alone.
Right.
Let him find his way. Let him build a radio
show. You need at least that amount of time to find your way.
He did great. I thought he did. Did you?
Yeah. I listen. I used to call him during all the time. I used to let him promote his show on my air. I mean, I wasn't sitting there threatened by anybody. I really never felt threatened by any of this. I knew I knew my audience was going to come with me, and they're, you know, a certain percentage of the audience, and that was enough for me. I felt good about it. So, listen, for me, it was a wonderful experience. Leaving, watching everything crumble, watching everyone, you know, Joel Hollander, I have no love for. I don't like the guy, and Les treated me horribly. They sued me, and I had no real animosity toward them. They wished me well, and then a couple of months later, they decided to sue me. And then I went to a personal meeting with Joel and Les, and they turned to me because it's nothing personal. No. And I said personal. I had tears in my eyes. I said, personal? Wow. I got to go hire an attorney? You guys are saying I did something dishonest?
You're using the money I made you to sue me?
Yeah, I said, you're trying to destroy my reputation? What have I done to you except I left a job that was going nowhere for me? You guys couldn't even give me more stations. You yourselves had said paying me was difficult. You know, why would you do this to me as a human being? What are you doing? And they were like animals to me. They just looked at me and said, hey, fuck you. I don't even think they knew what the hell they were doing. And I do have resentment. I do have a tremendous amount of animosity to those two guys. But I feel... I'm
actually surprised that he says they knew they were in deep trouble. Because they certainly never...
Well, they said it to me.
Gave indications of that.
Joel said it to me. He said, you left me in a really shitty place. I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, and I thought that was fair.
Well, he probably said that then, but his attitude going out of that place was that he was going to be fine. Again, the ads that, you know, dick jokes are old or whatever that stupid billboard ad was, it wasn't gracious.
Or what is it, Gary?
What was the discussion that was going on in the last few months of the show, the last 4 or 5 months of the show? Was there ever any discussion of getting rid of Howard before his time? Even when that suspension came, it was so weird. Like, Howard was doing a show, and they were like, they had just come and given Howard a bottle of wine to celebrate his 20th anniversary, and then 3 weeks later they suspended him. So, like, what were they talking about?
Yeah, you know, Robin just made me realize that, too. I mean, you know, we've all been through so many radio battles in our lives, and you could have gone on October 6th, quit, and left, right? But you gave, what was it, 14 months, right?
14 months notice.
Which is a huge amount of time to get over whatever panic there was. So I can't speak to that as an executive, because obviously I had nothing to do with it, but I can speak to it as a fan.
Right.
And I can say that, and personally, when that happened, I thought, now how would that be? If you make a decision corporately to keep you on for, let's say at that point, 12 months, and talk about going to Sirius, then how could it be in the 11th hour?
You're going to suspend
me. Don't talk about going to Sirius. I didn't get it.
Well, that's when they sat down and said they were going to sue me. I said, but guys, I said exactly what you just said. I said, then why did you keep me on if I was doing something wrong? You told me it was okay. And they said, we don't care. We're suing you. We're suing you. And that was the thing. I had no animosity to those guys, but when they decided to sue me, that freaked me out. That just freaked me out. I just said, that's just so wrong. You guys are being assholes. You're being dicks about it. But, you know, it all's well that ends well.
You know, the thing that was in my mind through this whole experience kept going back to the concept of free FM and the word and the freedom and what you have embodied your whole career. I mean, when David Letterman makes fun of the man, he's doing a bit. When you go at the man for your entire career, it's straight up, honest. It may be funny, but it's deadly real.
It's real. I never fabricated a fight.
So I thought about that, and I said to my wife, I'm going to get fired again.
So you got fired?
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Job eliminated.
Right.
And when Joel came and said that, he says, good news, bad news. I said, I'll take the bad. He goes, you're out of work. And I said,
what's the good?
What's the good news?
And he was very respectful to me. He was. I mean, he gave me this huge job. He said, here's the deal. We're eliminating this position. There won't be a president of programming. There's 200 other guys leaving today.
Right.
And we're honoring your contract.
Well, that was nice.
And in about 36 seconds, I decided I'm not getting fired ever again. I'm going to start my own business.
Oh, good.
And
they didn't sue you after they fired you?
No suit.
Right.
No suit. And within minutes, I came up with the idea that I'm doing now.
So you're part of that My Damn channel, right?
It's mine.
Because Yucko, that's yours.
That's mine.
And Yucko's on there.
Who?
Yucko the Clown.
No.
He's on My Damn channel.
No, that's a different... His is called
That was the damn show.
Oh, okay.
The damn show.
We should get you.
I got confused.
Here's what we do.
All right.
It's called MyDamnChannel.com. We're 3 years old.
Right.
Harry Shearer, who was here a few weeks ago, was the first guy signed.
Right.
So Harry does politics in his way.
He's great. He's brilliant.
He's amazing. Don runs our music channel. Don's produced the Stones and hundreds of the best acts of all time. And then we have comedies, original comedy series. We have a show called You Suck at Photoshop.
Are they video comedies or radio comedies?
This is video. This is original video.
Oh, no kidding.
On our site and syndicated.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's got...
it's free?
It's free.
My Damn Channel.
MyDamnChannel.com.
Ad-supported.
Yep.
And you got Harry Shearer. It's video of Harry.
He's making original videos. Harry just shot a video this weekend called Deaf Boys. He's taken on the Catholic Church in song.
That. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were up to that.
I'll send you some links.
So you're happy doing that?
For the first time ever, there's nobody to tell me what to do.
Are you making any money?
We're making money. We make more than we spend, so we figured out how to run a business.
Right.
And the idea, again, is to hire talent that we love.
Right.
And leave them alone. And let them do what they want to do. And their audience knows that.
Where'd you get the money to set that whole thing up? Because that sounds pretty expensive. You stream in audio and video.
Streaming video.
You stream in video, and you're hiring guys like Harry Shearer who don't come cheap.
Yeah.
And he's making videos and stuff for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's three things that everybody does wrong when they launch a web business. They raise too much money.
Right.
They spend too much money. And the CEOs pocket too much. So for me, I knew I was going to try as hard as possible to avoid those mistakes. We raised $500,000 to launch.
Right.
Hired all those guys. David Wayne does a comedy series called Wayne Days. We've had Elizabeth Banks, Jonah Hill, major talent. Paul Rudd does these comedy episodes. And how
many people you have viewing this stuff?
We have had over 100 million views. In a month, we can sometimes get millions of views in a month. And then we also syndicate.
So how do people hear about My Damn Channel?
We get a lot of really good press. It's the show called You Suck at Photoshop has a full-page story in Time magazine because it was that much of a phenomenon. And then we have a channel on YouTube. So we have about 62,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. And that brings a lot, of people to sort of find the
I'll check it out.
Site. Yeah.
Sounds pretty good, right, Robin?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sounds like fun.
I'd go check out, Harry Shearer doing anything.
Absolutely, love Harry.
I saw your cartoon on YouTube the other day, the pilot, so we'd be happy to find you the money for that if you can't find it here.
So wasn't there one point where they were going to replace our show with Artie and Gary doing the show? That was one idea, too, because Gary told me...
Was that real?
Yeah, Gary told me he got a call for, Artie told me he got a call for like $5 million or something.
Artie got one phone call. I wasn't a part of that. I can't remember who called him.
Right.
But in all those meetings where a bunch of old guys are sitting around scratching their heads saying we're fucked, somebody one day, I knew you'd know about it in about 10 seconds. Do you remember? Who called him?
I know exactly how it went.
Who called him?
The guys that got assigned to me, who they felt were closest to me, were Jack Silver and Bob Moore. Bob Moore.
Because
I used to go out there a lot. Right. And Tim was assigned to Artie. So Tim called Artie, and I remember I was driving home in the car.
The poaching strategy.
I was driving home in the car, and the cell phone rang, and it was Jack and Bob, and they were like,
hey, Gary.
Yeah. So like, they were good guys, but they're like, so what are you going to do? I said to them, I'm going with Howard. And they go, oh, because, we think... They said, we had a good idea. I don't even think they brought up Artie's name. They just said, we thought it would be a good idea if you stayed and did the show and did something. and in the meantime, I was petrified at the thought.
Right.
Certainly not going to stick around behind. And I never asked how much money it was, although...
Aren't you sorry you didn't stay?
I got to say,
you'd be still working there.
I talked to Tim a couple of days ago, and I said, how much do you think I could have gotten? Tim was telling me,
how much?
Probably could. He said, listen...
Artie says he got offered $5 million.
He said they were willing to offer Artie $5 million. He goes, I bet you could have got $1.5 million to $2 million to be Artie's sidekick, but... $1.5 million to $2 million on a 5-year contract that's over after 2 weeks isn't really a lot of money. Well, I don't think they were going to give me the guarantee they gave David Lee Roth.
Looks good on your resume, that's for sure. That is amazing. The best story is David Lee Roth played it. Actually, he is smart. He was on for a couple of months, and he had a $5 million deal, and I think it was guaranteed. I think it was $5 million. That's what I heard. I mean, it's not fair for you to tell the
amount. I don't tell you what I pay Harry, so I shouldn't tell you what I pay.
But he walked out with his full contract. He was smart. He didn't badmouth them.
That's a darn thing.
Because they were looking for,
Have you talked to him since it happened?
David?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Have we talked to him?
I don't think so.
Gary, have we spoken to David?
Because he went back to Van Halen, remember?
I went back to Van Halen for a while. And I said I wanted to have him on.
Maybe Langford did. I think someone told me Langford did or something.
There was some weird thing for a while where I think he wanted to come on, and there was this whole legal thing going on, so we couldn't mention half the people that we wanted to badmouth. And now it would be interesting to have David on.
Yeah,
and I think David thinks I handled it pretty classy. I never really bashed him or said anything bad about him. I like David. I think he's a cool guy. What is it, Jason? What do you want to say?
I just had a few questions for
Go ahead.
Some things he's saying aren't making any sense.
All right, here we go.
You were president of CBS Radio.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you had you wouldn't sit in on any meeting about whether Howard should be suspended or fired. That was done without your knowledge.
His job was the creative, sort of coming up with replacements.
That's right.
But he also never talk to Gary or Artie about doing a radio show.
Yeah, that is weird.
Well, because what you just heard is that, this was a couple of guys going rogue, calling up saying, I'll be the one to figure it out.
I think a lot of guys were trying to figure something out and see who was interested.
It just, listen, you're spinning a good story, and I bet most of it's true. But
why are you angry?
Well, yeah,
because I remember how we were treated at the end, especially you.
Yeah, but I don't think, honestly, I don't think Rob had a bit of input or
okay, fine.
Any opportunity to be mean to me.
But I mean, you can't be both. You can't be both president of CBS Radio and the guy who comes up with Free FM and Jack and then turns WCBS into Jack FM. But then when it comes to all the negative stuff,
that was a big mistake. Yeah.
But when it comes to the negative stuff, Howard getting suspended
that was lesson, Joel.
So that wasn't part of the Sexy 7 meetings?
No.
Because there's somebody out there that says you're full of crap.
Who says that?
Tim's out there.
Says that?
Tim says he was absolutely part of the suspension meetings and the...
Wow. Wrong.
It's wrong.
I mean, I just don't get it.
I'm telling you the truth.
Either you were
president. Do with it.
No,
I know you do.
I don't believe that would be like having the program director.
Well, why is Jason coming in to talk for Tim?
That's right. It's the PD and the owner of the company, right?
I don't care if I work in radio.
Did Tim send you in to represent him?
No, Tim did not send me in.
Tim being a big pussy.
He's in the private
Tim filling your head with a lot of stuff.
It's just like, I just hear a lot of middle manager BS. I was president of CBS Radio, but I did everything I could good for you, and I did everything I could do for the company.
I never met Rob when it came down to any of this stuff. Tim, are you anti-Rob, or you want to make a statement?
He is.
Go ahead.
I knew I'd get you in.
What's up there?
Right. Tell him, did I suspend Howard Stern?
I have no idea on that. All I do know is that when Joel called me up to talk to Artie, I think you were in the room when he called. It was on a conference call or speakerphone, whatever. So you had to be in that world of whatever. So it was. I just shudder just at this whole conversation because it was such a bizarro time. I think that Rob had great ideas that were unique ideas to the application, but they weren't practical ideas because obviously they didn't work. But came at it from an entirely different approach. That was interesting. I mean, I learned a lot through the process. Hindsight is 20/20 for all of us.
You didn't agree with I know, because you and I had a lot of discussions.
I left.
You just wanted to bring in a radio
I was
guy.
gone. I wanted to get the hell out of there. I was done with radio. I was really done with...
Do you dislike Rob?
No, not at all. He and I got along. I just didn't like the way the company was being run because, to me, Mel built this incredible fortress, and they were dismantling it, and that was the frustrating thing for me, and it was just a very frustrating place to be.
What would you have done if Joel wasn't there and I wasn't there, and you just had Philly? What would you have done? Would you have put taken Preston right on?
Preston and Steve, I would have hired them.
From MMR.
Because in Mel's world, it was always, and he would beat this into our head, hire somebody with a proven ratings track record of success. It was real simple. And I would go for somebody that had a proven ratings track record of success. And you couldn't have number one. Well, you know what? Number two looks awful good. And if Howard, you couldn't have him, then you know what? I want the next best thing, which was Preston and Steve, Kid Chris. And
do you think they should have done that in every market? They should have just tried to find someone who had...
I can't speak on behalf of all the other markets, but I think the individual programmers knew their individual markets better than anyone else did. And from my point of view, I think the company was being managed from the top down rather than letting it brew from the bottom up. And so
you felt as a program director they should have come to guys like you, program directors, and said, hey, we're running a company. We know what's going on in our market. Let us handle our individual market. Maybe you're right.
To a certain degree.
Yeah, maybe that was the way,
One of the things that Tim and I talked about yesterday that I think he finds very upsetting is that there were all these established stations. K-Rock in New York, YSP in Philly, JFK in New York. And Tim looks at those were a brand that people knew for years, and I don't think he agreed with just blowing them up and calling them free.
Well, the thing was that we had these established brands. It's like taking McDonald's, this incredible institution, and calling it Buc-ee's. What's that? And we rebranded these things, and it just didn't make sense.
Well, maybe the company felt that really I was the brand, and that these stations didn't do all that well outside of me.
Well, if we were...
Maybe.
Hindsight, once again, if we were smart, we would have taken them and making them Howard 94, Howard, 1026, or, whatever, and built the stations out that way after this experience here. But the daunting task that Rob had, I mean, I wouldn't want that job for all the... I mean, it was an incredible situation that he was in, and you were the guy that did it, and I applaud you for at least stepping up to do it, but I'll tell you, it was a no-win situation. You even said, I'm the kamikaze guy, I'm going to be fired in X amount of days.
He said
Rob
saw the whole thing happen.
That's a job.
But I admire you coming in here. It's a job I
didn't ask for.
I love that you came in here and told us what was going on behind the scenes. So I appreciate you being here.
It's such a thrill to be with you.
The guy's got balls of steel, I'll tell you. But to do that job, it was fucking horrendous. And it was under horrendous. And
why does Jason think you hate Rob?
I don't hate Rob. There was a frustration that I had.
You just hated the whole experience.
I hated the whole experience, and I tell you, Joe Hollander was very, very difficult in making or allowing it to work. For some reason, had a personal grudge against me or whatever. I don't know what that was. But it just, you just don't mesh with people.
Right.
It was enough, and I had enough of it.
I was glad you did. I like you being here.
Oh, thank you.
Check out Rob Barnett's website at mydamnchannel.com. Now he's happier. He doesn't have to replace me. He's building his own thing.
Thanks.
And he's doing well.
Thank God.
I like that, too. I'm happy for you.
Thanks, man.
Still married?
I'm married.
Right,
twins. 2.5-year-old company and 2.5-year-old twins. And a 16-year-old. So I'm getting old.
And you're out of radio. You're happy. Okay, it's mydamnchannel.com. I'm going to check it out, Rob.
Thanks, man.
All right, we'll be back right after these words.